Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when people talk about learning a language, the mental image is it's pretty dusty. It's vocabulary flashcards, conjugation tables, maybe a teacher correcting your pronunciation of the cat is on the table. It feels very academic,
Well,
safe.
feels like a classroom exercise.
Yeah.
Like it's something you do to pass a test, not something you use to actually live your life.
Exactly. But today, we are tossing the textbook completely out the window. We are looking at language as a survival mechanism. We've got a stack of sources here, specifically from English Unleashed and the English Podcast Zone, that take us on a pretty wild ride.
Yeah, we are going from the privacy of your own bedroom, where you're trying to trick your brain into learning, to the sheer panic of forgetting someone's name at a cocktail party.
And then to a high stakes boardroom with a nightmare boss, and finally to the mob.
It is quite a trajectory. I mean, we're covering the full spectrum of human anxiety here.
We really are. But the mission of this deep dive is to synthesize these four very distinct sources. On the surface, they look like educational dialogues designed to simulate real English.
Right.
But when you peel back the layers, and that's what we're doing today for you, they are actually giving us a masterclass in human psychology, corporate strategy, and even macroeconomics.
I think that's the key distinction. These sources aren't giving us the polished, polite English you find in the university course. They're showing us characters in actual distress.
Yeah.
They're showing us the messy reality of trying to get what you want from other people, whether that's respect, a promotion, or a loan to pay off a debt.
So let's map this out for you. We are going to start with the internal game, how to hack your brain to learn faster using a technique called shadowing. Then we move to the social game, so how to save face when you've messed up.
And then the corporate game,
Yeah.
manipulating perception to deal with difficult people.
And we'll finish with the economic reality check, what happens when the money runs out, even for the Godfather.
From neural pathways to bankruptcy. Let's do it.
Let's start with English Unleashed. This source tackles a massive insecurity right out of the gate. I hear this all the time from people trying to learn anything, not just English. They say, I can't master this skill because I don't live in the right place.
Right, the I can't learn English because I don't live in London excuse.
Or I can't learn to act because I'm not in Hollywood.
It's what the source calls the myth of location. It's a very convenient excuse because it externalizes the failure. If geography dictates ability, then you're off the hook.
You can tell yourself the odds were just against you.
Exactly. But this source dismantles that idea pretty ruthlessly. It argues that mastery isn't about your zip code. It's about small, smart steps integrated into your existing daily architecture.
And the main tool they offer for this is shadowing. Now, I've heard of this, but the source describes it almost like an athletic drill.
It really is.
You listen to a speaker, and you repeat exactly what they say simultaneously, like an echo. No pausing, no translating, you just echo them.
That's the critical part. No pausing. You have to be right on their heels.
But play devil's advocate for a second here. Isn't that just parroting? If I'm just mimicking sounds without stopping to analyze the grammar or look up the definitions, am I actually learning the language? Or am I just acting like a recording device?
That is the common criticism. But here is where the neuroscience comes in. The source explains that traditional learning often gets stuck in what we call the analysis paralysis loop.
Okay, walk me through that.
So you hear a word, your brain translates it into your native language, checks the grammar rules you learned in school, formulates a response, translates that back, and then sends a signal to your mouth.
That sounds exhausting just listening to you describe it. It's like the buffering wheel on a video, but in real life.
Exactly. And in a real conversation, that delay is fatal. Shadowing is designed to bypass that executive processing center entirely. It connects the auditory input directly to the motor output.
So you aren't training your intellect.
No, you are training your muscle memory. It's about prosody, the rhythm, the music, the speed of the language. You're forcing your brain to adapt to the flow before it understands the structure.
So it's like learning to dance by moving your feet instead of reading a manual about foxtrots. You get the feel before you get the theory.
Precisely. And once you have the rhythm, the definitions fill in much faster because the framework is already there. But the source pairs this with another technique to bridge the gap between those practice sessions. They call it the Think in English strategy.
Now this one sounds incredibly basic, almost childish. It's just narrating your life internally. I'm waking up, the sky is blue, I need coffee.
It does sound simple, but the cognitive load is actually significant. The goal is to remove the translation delay we just talked about. If you see a cup of coffee and your immediate instinctive thought is the English word coffee rather than your native language, you've won.
You've removed the processing lag.
You are effectively claiming ownership of the object in the new language.
I really liked the tech tip they threw in, too, changing your phone settings to the target language.
Oh, pure exposure therapy.
It's genius because it's passive. I mean, we look at our phones, 100 times a day? Maybe more.
Easily more.
So you're seeing settings, delete, download, airplane mode constantly. You aren't sitting down to study them with flashcards, but your brain is registering them as the default reality.
And that's how you build vocabulary without studying. You see it so often it becomes invisible, which is the definition of fluency. The source also mentions the diary method, which I found refreshing because it lowers the bar so much. It suggests writing just 3 sentences a day.
I went to work, I was tired, I drank coffee. That's it.
That's it. It removes the pressure to be profound. Most people quit journaling or learning because they think they need to write an essay. But consistency beats intensity every time.
Right, writing 3 simple sentences every day for a year builds a massive structure compared to writing 1 perfect essay and then quitting because it was too hard.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the internal work. We're building the muscle memory, we're changing our phone settings, we're writing our 3 sentences. Now let's take that muscle memory out into the wild. We're moving to our second source, the first episode from the English podcast Zone. And honestly, this scenario made me sweat just reading it.
The social survival nightmare.
It really is. We have a character, Nick. He runs into Anna. They met at a conference literally last week. He stops her, he's super friendly, engaging, and then he hits the wall. He has absolutely no idea what her name is.
It's the universal panic moment. You can practically hear his internal monologue screaming.
So how does he handle it? The source highlights a very specific phrase he uses. He says, "It slipped my mind." Now, I want to drill down on this. Why that specific phrasing? Why not just say, "I'm sorry, I forgot your name"?
Nuance is everything here. I forgot is an active verb. It implies you did something or failed to do something. It can feel personal, like you weren't important enough for me to commit to memory.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see that. It puts the blame on you.
Exactly. But it slipped. My mind makes the name the subject. The name is the thing that moved. It suggests the information was there, stored safely, but it just momentarily slid away.
It frames it as a temporary mechanical malfunction rather than a lack of care.
It's a face-saving mechanism for both parties.
That is a subtle but powerful distinction. Blame the brain, not the heart. But the source goes beyond just the apology. It gives us tactical ways to avoid admitting it in the first place. They mention the business card trick.
Classic. Do you have a card on you?
But you have to be careful with that one. What if they say, "No, I ran out"? Then you're stuck and you look weird for asking.
That's when you pivot to the email trick mentioned in the source. You ask them to put their email in your phone so you can send them something later. Most people's email addresses contain their name.
Sneaky! I love it.
There is also the third-party strategy. The host in the source shares a story about a family reunion where he forgot his own uncle's name.
That makes me feel better about forgetting a colleague's name. If you can forget your uncle, anything is possible.
He had to wait for a cousin to walk by and whisper, "Who is that?"
Yeah.
It highlights that you need allies. But sometimes there is no ally, and you have no card strategy. You just need to eject before you get caught.
The escape hatch.
I'm in a bit of a hurry.
It's simple, but effective. It validates ending the interaction without being rude. You aren't leaving because you don't know who they are. You're leaving because the clock is ticking.
It sets a boundary. It protects your social standing while getting you out of the danger zone. It's not just language, it's social strategy.
Okay, so we've survived the street encounter, but now the stakes are getting higher. We are entering the corporate world. This is episode 2 of our source material. We're in a meeting with a manager named Mr. Swan.
Mr. Swan, the archetype of the difficult boss. He's demanding, he's dismissive, and he speaks in corporate buzzwords. He's the guy who wants concrete solutions, but doesn't want to hear anything he doesn't like.
This scene was fascinating because it shows 2 employees, Roger and Natalie, pitching the exact same outcome but getting totally different results.
Right, the context is that the company is losing market share because they are too expensive. Roger, the first employee, is logical. He's the math guy. He says, we should lower our prices to match the competitors.
Which makes sense. If you're too expensive, cut the price. Basic economics.
But Mr. Swan destroys him. He says, it'll never fly.
It'll never fly, meaning dead on arrival.
Exactly. But then Natalie chimes in. She suggests a 2-for-1 offer. And suddenly, Mr. Swan is beaming. He calls it a brilliant idea.
But hold on, let's look at the math here. A 2-for-1 sale is 50% off. It is lowering the price. In fact, it might be even more expensive for the company because you're giving away twice the inventory. Why does Roger get crushed and Natalie get a promotion?
This is the psychology of business framing. Lowering prices sounds like defeat. It sounds like you are devaluing your brand. It frames the action as a loss to the company.
It sounds desperate, like you're admitting the product isn't worth the sticker price.
Deeply desperate. But a 2-for-1 promotion? That sounds like a strategy to drive sales. It sounds active. It sounds like you're giving the customer a gift. You aren't cutting your legs off. You're expanding your reach.
So the lesson here isn't about math, it's about language. Natalie spoke the boss's language. She understood that Mr. Swan wants to feel like a winner, not a discounter.
She did. And the source highlights other vocabulary that signals this kind of professionalism. For example, using the word consider.
Consider. It sounds so heavy.
It implies weight. If you say, we should think about this, it sounds casual. Anyone can think. But if you say, this is something we should consider, it implies a formal evaluation process. It signals to a guy like Mr. Swan that you are serious.
It's amazing how much of corporate success is just signaling, using in the market instead of in the industry, asking for concrete solutions instead of just answers.
It's a code. If you break the code, like Roger did, you're out. If you master it, like Natalie, you win. It's about understanding the power dynamics in the room and using words to align yourself with the power.
Speaking of power dynamics, let's move to our final section. We are going to a place where the code is a little different and the stakes are life and death. This is episode 4, The Economics of Despair.
This is a major tonal shift. We leave the shiny office and go to the underworld. We have a character, Charlie, who is in deep trouble.
He's desperate. He goes to see a man named Mr. Corleone, obviously a Godfather reference. Charlie lists his problems. He lost his job, credit card bills, car payments, mortgage, son's tuition. He needs a loan.
And typically, in these stories, this is where the mob boss offers a predatory loan with high interest, or threatens to break his legs if he doesn't pay. We expect the danger to come from the loan itself.
Right, but that's not what happens. And this was the twist that really got me. Mr. Corleone refuses the loan because he is broke too.
This is such a profound way to explain what a recession actually is. We hear that word on the news, recession. We think of stock tickers or GDP graphs, but the source defines it through this interaction. A recession isn't just numbers, it's when the flow of money stops.
Even the sharks starve when the ocean is empty.
Exactly. If the mob, the unofficial lenders, the guys who operate outside the law and usually deal in cash, if they don't have cash, it means the systemic freeze is total.
The source uses this conversation to drop some specific financial vocabulary too, like the difference between loan and a loan.
It seems simple, but in a high-stakes conversation, confusing those two is disastrous. One is help, the other is isolation. And mortgage.
The silent T.
Yes, a specific loan for property. But the phrase that really struck me was when Charlie says, on top of all that.
On top of all that, it's the perfect phrase for when life is just piling on, you lose your job, then your car breaks down, and on top of all that, you get the flu.
It's the architecture of despair. But the most insightful part of the source for me wasn't the vocabulary, it was the cultural deep dive regarding debt. The source contrasts the North American view of debt with the European, specifically Swiss view.
This blew my mind. Being from North America, the idea of credit history is just a fact of life. You need debt. You need to borrow money to prove you are good at borrowing money so you can borrow more money to buy a house.
It's a paradox. You're encouraged to be in debt. The banks aggressively market credit cards to 18-year-old university students. They give away free t-shirts or frisbees just to get you to sign up. The system is designed to hook you early because debt is seen as a tool for growth.
But then the source compares that to Switzerland.
Where the logic is completely flipped, the source gives an example. To get a credit card with a 500 franc limit, you might have to deposit 700 francs into the bank first.
Wait, I need to wrap my head around this. So you have to have more money than you want to borrow just to get the card. That defeats the purpose of borrowing.
In the North American mind, yes. But in that cultural context, debt is seen as inherently risky or even shameful. You have to prove you have the assets before you engage with credit. In the U.S., you borrow to prove you can pay later. It's a fundamental difference in how society views value. One looks at future potential, the other looks at past accumulation.
It really makes you realize that financial literacy isn't just math, it's cultural anthropology. If you take your American strategy into a Swiss bank, they'll look at you like you're crazy.
And bringing this back to our full circle today, whether it's the Swiss banker, the mob boss, the corporate manager, or the person you met at a party, it's all about knowing the rules of the specific game you are playing.
That's the synthesis, isn't it? Shadowing builds the physical ability to speak, but the other sources teach us the strategy of what to say.
Exactly. You can have perfect pronunciation, but if you tell Mr. Swan to lower prices, you fail. If you tell an acquaintance I forgot your name, you offend them. Language is the interface, but psychology is the operating system.
I can't stop thinking about that mob scene, though.
It sticks with you.
It raises a scary question. We rely on these safety valves. We think, if the bank says no, I have other options. If I lose my job, I'll drive Uber. But the source implies that everything is connected. If the recession is deep enough, the safety valves shut off too.
That is the real provocative thought here. It suggests that there is a point where the economy doesn't just slow down, it goes completely silent. If a recession is defined by a lack of money circulation, what happens to society when even the unofficial lenders are broke? It's not just a market correction, it's a total systemic freeze that goes way beyond bank numbers.
Well, that is a terrifying thought to end on. But hopefully this deep dive has given you the tools to navigate these situations before they get that bad.
We gave you some concrete solutions.
We did, so keep shadowing, keep considering your words carefully, and maybe write down your friends' names in your phone right now.
And check your bank account.
Definitely check your bank account. Thanks for listening. See you next time.